Hi, and welcome to Uncork PA. I'm your host, Missy Wilson, a second generation winery owner at Sutter Ridge Vineyards in Kutztown. And I'm super excited to introduce you to all the vineyards, the wineries, and the proponents of the Pennsylvania wine world. Harvest season is upon us. So if you're about and you see the vineyards in your tours and the wineries throughout Pennsylvania, you'll notice that most of them either have started or will be starting their harvesting shortly. Our first guest today, Cain Hickey, will pass on some knowledge about what's happening in the vineyard and what winemakers are looking for this time of year. And then we'll chat a little bit about pet-friendly wineries. Many wineries have actually opened their space up to pets, and we'll talk a little bit about questions to ask in advance, what to bring with you to these wineries, and then I'm happy to be talking with Linda of Mountain View Vineyard about their pet-friendly space, in addition to their winery, their wines, events, and even more. Looking to do some exploring across the state? Your best tool is Pennsylvania Winery Association's website at pennsylvaniawine.com. There you can find wineries close by to you or where you're ready to take that road trip to. They have this amazing create your own itinerary tool where you choose the wineries that you're interested in, and then Google will put together a map and directions for you to take all the guesswork out. So this time of year is the time of year that wineries spend their whole year preparing for, harvest season. Unlike breweries who produce beer throughout the year and have fermentations constantly going on, wineries have this one time of year to bring in their grapes and to make the best wines possible. If things go a little awry, or say you have like the best vintage ever and you wish you had a bigger one, unfortunately that's it, and your next chance is yet another year away. So I'm happy to have with us today Cain Hickey. He's Pennsylvania State Viticultural Agent. And Cain joined us on a podcast a couple months back in February to talk about the difference between hybrid and vinifera grapes. But this week we're going to chat about the vineyards, the grapes, and harvest season. So thanks so much for joining us again, Cain.
Thanks, Missy. It's my
Yeah.
pleasure to be back.
Wonderful. So, can you give us a little bit of an overview about what's so special about this time of year and why the focus all year has really been here right now, this time frame?
Well, you kind of said it best. I mean, we have one shot. It's a perennial crop, and you harvest one time a year. So there's lots and lots of work and preparation that goes into this. So it's an exciting time of year, and yeah, it's just there's folks are busy with harvest and processing in the winery, but also still managing the vineyard, maybe still spraying as needed, and then wine festivals in the tasting room. It's an exciting time to go out and visit wineries. So it's yeah, it's just everything I talked about back in February. I don't know if we talked about pruning and setting the stage. I mean, all that is in anticipation of what's going on right now.
Perfect. So let's talk about something that we can never predict, and it makes an important part of harvest and actually the whole growing season, which is the weather. And I feel like depending on where you have been in Pennsylvania, things have been maybe drastically different. Some people have been kind of on that drought cusp. Some people have been getting monsoons. It's kind of all over the board. So how does the weather, especially like right now, how does it affect the harvest season and the grape growing season?
Yeah, weather is important all year, and in general, across Pennsylvania, it seems to have been relatively dry in July and August. And so we would say the weather was favorable for managing diseases and setting the stage for a nice harvest period. But like like every year, the season's not over until the grapes are harvested. And so the last 2 weeks have been somewhat rainy. And I think that rain, from when I talk to most growers, whether it be in the far southeast, central, northwest, it's rained off and on over the last 2 weeks. So a little bit challenging as the grapes are now starting to accumulate sugar. Acids are starting to drop, and the skins are softening, and their integrity is decreasing. So with rain comes a whole other suite of issues, whether that be fungal disease pressure, decreasing sugar values because of the berries taking up that water. So weather, because it's unpredictable, it just adds that other factor into harvest decisions, and it makes them more complex, right?
Exactly. So we were talking about like some of the things that, the rain can kind of do and everything else. When you're looking at a vineyard, do all the grapes come in at one time? So is everything ready to pick? Like everybody's picking the same thing on the same day and then boom, you're done.
Yeah. No. So in the context of Pennsylvania, typically the growing season starts down in the far southeastern part of the state, just considering Pennsylvania. And then the northwest part of the state might be 7, 10, 14 days behind the far. So just to put it in the context of county, say Chester or Delaware County relative to Erie County, right? They could be drastically different. And then you have cultivars that come in at different times. So things, in general, whites are harvested before reds. So things like Pinot Gris or Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay, those are going to be harvested before things like Cabernet Franc or Chambourcin or Merlot or Petit Verdot, and on and on. So in general, that's the case. So right now, what I'm hearing is that lots of whites are well underway. There's some whites still out there to be harvested, but earlier whites are things like Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Gris. Later whites might be things like Vidal Blanc or Riesling or Chardonnay. But depending on where you're at in the state, a lot of those cultivars might still be on the vine. Like Cayuga White is probably mostly harvested or will be harvested in the southeast. Central PA, probably a little less. And then in the Northwest, they'll probably start harvesting Cayuga at the end of this week and the beginning of next. So, yeah, that's about where we're at. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, basically. So we're not, people who have 20 acres of vines aren't picking them over 2 days, period.
No.
Which would be crazy, which would not be fun to do in general.
Well, for example, like at your place, I imagine you guys have harvested the Pinot Gris already. Maybe not, but you might go into the Pinot Noir, which I said earlier that reds are later, but Pinot Noir is an exception, right? It's not a Bordeaux red. And so you have Pinot Noir at Cedar Ridge, and Pinot Noir is harvested before your Cabernet Franc. And,
exactly. And then we actually harvested some of it earlier for some sparkling and then also for some rosé. So actually, kind of differently, the Pinots were our first to come in, but it's basically because they weren't for the Pinot Noir varietal. We had pulled them in for sparkling and things where you didn't need quite as much ripeness as other grapes did.
Which adds a whole other level of factors is your production goals, right? Are you producing a sparkling wine? Do you want to have it as a table still wine? And I know later on, because I got the questions, you'll be talking about late harvest or ice wine. So that all determines when you will harvest as well as the production goals and what wine styles you're aiming for.
Perfect. So, kind of along those lines, how do the vineyard managers and how do the winemakers actually determine whether or not it's time to go ahead and pull those grapes in or whether they want to kind of leave them hang for a teeny bit longer?
Right. Several factors, often dictated by the weather, but people take records, right? So, you know relatively when you harvested something the year before or the 10 years before, depending on how old the vineyard is. So you have records to go by. So in general, as you get to know your site and the cultivars you grow, you kind of know, okay, it's probably going to be in early September or mid-September or early October, depending on what cultivar it is and the production goals. But then every year is a little different. And so the weather complicates those harvest factors, right? So if your fruit is in really good integrity and you have a rain predicted, you might want to hang it through that rain system because the fruit's in good integrity now, and you're aiming for a certain wine style that requires you to hang that fruit longer, right? But if your fruit is already starting to decrease in integrity and it's starting to rot and you have this rainstorm ahead, you might opt to pick it before that rainstorm is, and so you don't want to be quite as risky, right? But the other things like sugar content, acid content, come into play, but also varietal flavors in those sorts of things, which aren't necessarily, you can't measure them objectively, but by tasting them and having experience with them, you can kind of determine, are these flavors there? Because you can't change necessarily, the flavors are more difficult to change in the winery after it's been harvested, but sugars and acids, those are more easily changed by winemaking practice, right? So the answer is weather comes into play, and you use both objective, meaning numerical measurements, but also sensory, using your senses, right? You look at the fruit. Is it rotting? Is it not rotting? What color is it? Are the seeds brown, or are they still green? Am I tasting the flavors I want to taste? All these factors go into play when determining when to harvest.
Wonderful. So when you do decide to harvest, then how do you actually go, like how do people who have wineries and vineyards, how do they go about it? Is everything done by hand? Are there these amazing machines that do it? Is it a combination of both? Like, how
Yeah.
are people bringing the grapes in?
I would say up in the northwest part of the state, in Erie County, there's lots of grape harvesters around, mechanical grape harvesters. So there's a machine that will go and gently shake the vine, and grapes will be harvested that way. Not always, though, up there. I mean, sometimes folks will hand harvest wine grapes, but by and large, things like Niagara and Concord and some of the Americans cultivars and hybrids are harvested by machine. And then when you go in the central part and the southeastern part of the state, where there's less harvester availability, uh, mechanical harvester availability, a lot of the wine grapes will be harvested by hand. I will say, and as I was talking to Linda about this, Linda Rice, who will be on next after me, they have a mechanical harvester. And so what I'm seeing is a trend that even vineyards with modest acreage, between 10, 20, 30 acres, are starting to invest in mechanized equipment to harvest so that they can refine the time that they harvest and optimize harvest flexibility. Because as I just said, there's so many factors that go into deciding when to harvest, weather, fruit integrity. It's really important to be able to harvest exactly when you want to harvest, and mechanized equipment allow you to do that. So it's a mix across the state, some hand harvest, some mechanized harvest.
Okay, so we were talking about just normal grapes and normal varietals that you see on a regular basis, your Chardonnay, your Pinot Gris, things like that, Cab Franc that you get from the tasting room. Sometimes if you go into a tasting room, you'll see like late harvest wines or ice wines. How is it different? When you pull in the grapes, how is that a little bit different than when you would normally just buy, like, instead of an ice wine, you're having that normal varietal? Like, why is it called an ice wine or a late harvest, and how does that kind of make a little bit of a difference?
Yeah. So a late harvest in ice wine, basically the difference is that those grapes are left on the vine for an extended, what we call an extended hang time. So if you typically would harvest, I'll just use Vidal Blanc as a case study, because Vidal Blanc is a popular grape used to make these late harvest styles, not exclusively, but popular. Then if you typically would harvest Vidal Blanc in early October, you might hang it for a late harvest style until maybe mid to late November. And if it was an ice wine, you would hang it until you got a freeze that maybe is 17 Fahrenheit, because a freeze like freezing 32 is not enough to dehydrate it to the, like it would dehydrate and freeze water, or it would freeze water, but there's lots of sugars and solutes in a grape. And so you need to get a lot colder for you to be able to pick it off the vine and really call it ice wine. I mean, so it needs to get roughly 17 Fahrenheit. At least that's the amount that they use in Canada. But the whole point is to concentrate flavors, right? You're extending that hang time. Grapes are dehydrating, and with dehydration comes more concentrated flavors, but also less juice. And so that's why when you press something that has been frozen, or at least has been dehydrated in the case of a late harvest, you get concentrated flavors, but much less juice. And so those wines are typically sold in smaller bottles and garner a higher price premium, because you just get so much less of it than if you harvested them when they're physiologically mature.
So, is there anything else you think that is like super important for our listeners out there who might not quite know as much about harvest season and like what's going on right now? Are there any other little things that you think would be like a really great bit of knowledge that they can take in so that they can really appreciate what's going on this time of year?
Just to know that it's a pretty time to be out visiting vineyards and wineries. You'll see lots of activity in the vineyard, or see lots of maybe folks moving around and harvesting things, and just that it's an important time of the year. I mean, everything we do from basically November or after leaf fall until right now. So from November, December of last year until 2021 until right now, everything that's done in the vineyard is in anticipation of this. And so when you go out and visit the Pennsylvania wineries and vineyards, just know that there's lots of at stake, and that that yeah, it's a great time to go out, because it feels like the senses are heightened, just because you see things going on in the vineyard. The grapes are red, and the grapes, you can often smell the aroma in the air, and so it's just a special time. I don't know of any anecdotes or nuggets other than that.
Wonderful. So, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, Cain, and giving us a lot of information about actually the harvest season. And I feel like everybody's going to appreciate that bottle of wine so much more, knowing how much work goes into getting those grapes into that wine. So,
Yes.
thanks, Cain.
Thanks, Missy.
You're welcome. So, as the weather starts to cool down a bit, people actually start to think about not only going out and visiting the various wineries, but bringing their pets with them too as part of their winery visits. There are a lot more pet friendly wineries throughout Pennsylvania, and before you head out there with your pets, you'll just want to make sure that you check a few boxes. First of all, before you do visit a winery with your dog, check to make sure that that winery is pet friendly. If they don't mention it on their website, I would definitely recommend giving them a call and asking them what their pet policies are. You should also know the personality of your pet. If your dog is a little bit high strung or doesn't feel comfortable around other dogs, kids, people, loud noises, a winery might not be the best idea for you. You're going to make sure you want to bring some stuff to keep your dog occupied if you plan on staying seated for a while. So bring some chew toys or some treats to make sure that they stay happy. And please, key thing is make sure that you do keep your pet leashed at all times, not only for the safety of other guests and dogs, but also there's nothing worse than a dog getting loose at a winery and then an owner trying to find them. Also, make sure don't tie that leash to the table. All it does is take one pull, or the chair, take one pull, and the dog can go off running. So just hold on to your pet, keep them leashed at all times. Most pet friendly wineries do have water bowls available for dogs, but don't assume that they do. So make sure you have a backup plan with regards to that. Be polite and clean up after your dog. And also, before taking your dog for a walk through the grounds, just check in with the tasting room staff to make sure that all areas are available, or if there are any areas that are off limits. These are just a few good tips to make sure that both you and your pet enjoy that wonderful winery experience. So if you're interested in having your pet join you at the winery and you're on the eastern part of the state like we are, a great place to visit is Mountain View Vineyard in Stroudsburg. And today we have with us the owner, Linda. Thanks so much for joining us today, Linda.
Thanks for having me, Missy.
Yeah, sure thing. So those of us that might not be as familiar with maybe the eastern part of the state, or maybe you're more familiar with the southeast, where are you located with regards to some, landmarks or other cities close by?
So when people think of the Poconos, we're considered to be in the heart of the Poconos, and we're very close to Camelback Mountain if you ski, or Jack Frost. I think Camelback's about 10 minutes away. Jack Frost is about 20. We're close to Kalahari and Great Wolf Resorts, Mount Airy Casino, the Crossings Outlet Store. So there's a lot to do and a lot of great places to visit around us.
Wonderful. So you're actually both a vineyard and a winery, which is amazing. So how and when did you guys get started?
So we just celebrated 13 years of being open for business. We started planting grapes back in 2003. My husband and I went on a trip to the Finger Lake region of New York with friends. and he fell in love with it. He fell in love with the beauty of all those vineyards. And what fascinated him was the fact that there were so many different styles of wine. And between the whites and the reds, sweet and dry, and the rosés, he was just fascinated and thought, wow, I can make something for anyone. And so he ordered, the day after we came home from the trip, he ordered, excuse me, 70 baby vines. I think it was from AA Vineyards. And they said, oh, we're not going to guarantee them if you're going to plant them in the fall, which it was. And he ordered them anyway. He said, that's okay, I'll take my chances. And we waited a whole year to see if we had the right growing conditions. And when we found we did, he then said we needed to invest in a tractor. And I thought he was insane because we lived on the side of a very steep mountain, totally wooded. And we built a house nestled in the woods about halfway up the mountain. And so, yeah, so we then proceeded to take down 4 acres of trees ourselves after work. And we would go up and down the mountain every day after work, cut about 3 or 4 trees down, come back down, go back up the next day, come back down. And we did it so many times, it took years, so many times that I would say to him, you've got to be a mountain goat to work this property. What were you thinking? And so a mountain goat in the wine glass is actually our logo. My son designed it.
Which is amazing, and it's actually such a super personal story, which I feel like a lot of these wineries are. It's amazing. They're all these family-owned places that people can enjoy and get to know the owners and see all the love and joy that have gotten them into this this place in their lives. So, as we just talked about with Cain, there's a lot of work that goes into not only maintaining a vineyard, but also picking that vineyard. Oh, yes. And he also kind of mentioned, but you guys made a really big investment this year. So what did you guys do?
So last harvest season, we had 4 times the amount of grapes to harvest as the year before. And part of it was due to the fact that the soil was, this is a new property that we grew from our original mountainside property. And the soil was dead from conventional farming and a lot of chemical use. And so it has taken us 6-7 years to restore it back to really optimal health organically. And so the crop was just amazing. But the struggle with that was that we didn't have enough manpower between allowing guests to come and help pick on the weekends to trying to have enough staff. It was just horrible. My husband and I spent a lot of time. It was 4 weeks literally to harvest. And, you know, some grapes we lost because they were overripe. So we decided to make an investment, and we bought, there's so many different products out there and they're very expensive. So we settled on a smaller, it's a pull behind harvester that goes over top of the vines and kind of fingers shake them off. And a big investment, really strange though. We only have to pay 1 payment a year for 5 years. And it's like hiring a person. So we thought it was so worth it. I would recommend it.
Wonderful. So you've got a little bit of the extra help in the vineyard mechanically, which, I mean, as we have talked about, I mean, I think all places are kind of suffering a little bit with regards to finding enough people to come in and actually physically work the property, that any help that you possibly can get is a great advantage. So one of the reasons that we're chatting with you today is because we're talking about pet-friendly wineries, and you guys are like extremely pet friendly. It's not just that you let the dogs come and hang out on site. You actually have some great things going on with the pets and what you have, people who bring their pets. So what are some things that people can expect when they come to visit you?
So one of our staff, Taylor, is our marketing manager, and she came up with this idea of Woof Wednesday. So every Wednesday, she'll take a photo of someone's special pet, and we post that on all of our social media. And I'm sorry, I don't know this gentleman's name, but adorable, so adorable. So you have an opportunity to have your pet highlighted and shared on our social media. We make sure that we have water bowls. You mentioned that earlier. We have several water bowls. So if you forget to bring one, we do have them. And our property is now over 100 acres. So there's plenty of room for you to walk your dog. We just ask, as you mentioned, make sure that your dog is leashed. Oh, and there's a photo up there by our goat in the glass. So make sure that they're leashed. And we have 2 pet waste stations on the property as well. So again, we just ask that you pick up after your pet so that no one steps in it. And we just ordered that. We're expecting them to come in anytime now. We have plush toys that we're investing in for your pet. One is going to look like a wine bottle. It has split rail red, one of our wine labels. And then we have one that looks like a beer can because we also brew. And that will have one of our favorite labels, Bite Me Billy, on it. And we have had in the past, and we're looking for a new vendor for pet treats in case you forget to bring your treats. We had a company out in California we were buying them from, and we've been ghosted somehow. We reach out. Oh, that's my Angel. So a couple of the pictures are of our dogs. We have two this is Angel. She is a 6-year-old chocolate lab. And then you'll see a German Shepherd in here somewhere along the way. That's Faith. She's our three-year-old German Shepherd. They have never been leashed except to go to the vet. So what we do is we bring them in the morning before we open for business, and then we bring them home so that other dogs don't. Sometimes they get upset if my dog does happen to sneak over, because they're not leashed and their dog is. So we don't like there to be any issue, so we take them home. Yeah.
So in addition to being pet friendly, and you had mentioned the pups coming over, you actually have some other fun pets besides your pups that people can visit when they come and visit you.
Yes, and I don't think there's a picture of them in there. My husband has wanted goats because that's our logo, our brand, for 13 years now, and he finally wore me down. We have two Nigerian dwarfs, and their names are Billy Joe and Bobby Sue, after the Steve Miller Band song. And they're so cute. So on Saturdays, we do 2 tours. One is a hay wagon ride around the property, and the goats come with us, and they sit on someone's lap, one of our guests. And then my husband will take them around so that guests can pet them for the next hour while I'm doing a vineyard and production tour. But the guests love them. In fact, because they're babies, we only keep them there for about an hour, and then he takes them back to the farm, and guests get upset if they came later or before. They're like, "Where are the goats? That's why we came." So they have to nap.
Well, now they know the important time to come and visit the goats are between
usually between 1 and 3. That's the best time.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So speaking of the tours and the things that you have going on, do people need reservations to come out and visit you for either the tours, to do a tasting, or anything else?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. During the week, you typically don't need a reservation. It's always good to have one, but they're not absolutely necessary. We do ask, though, for you to make a reservation Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if you want to be either inside the tasting room or on the wraparound porch. We do tableside service. When COVID hit and we were required to do that with Governor Wolf, we kept that. So we treat our property like a restaurant now in those 2 areas. We do have a kitchen, so you can order food. And then there's so we do recommend reservations there, and you can register on our website. We use Talk, which is instead of Open Table, we use Talk for reservations. Then there's lots of open seating, though, on our beautiful patio. We have a tented area also. We have at least a couple hundred more seats, so you don't need a reservation. If the weather is going to be bad, then you probably want to make a reservation for inside or the porch. If you want to take a tour, we do ask for reservations for those as well, because it's limited. We can seat 20 people on the hay wagon ride. And so we limit it to 20 for both tours. And the tours are only on Saturdays.
Perfect. So if people want to go out and get more information about your wines, the hours that you're open, your various events you've going on, if they want to make a reservation, all this fun and amazing things you guys have going on there, what is your website and what's the best way to do all that stuff?
So our website is mountainviewvineyardsingular.com.
Make sure you don't put the S on the end, because it's not going to go where it's supposed to. I learned that one the wrong way.
also our Facebook page, Mountain View Vineyard Winery Brewery, I think is how that reads. So you can register, make a reservation on either platform. Also, we just something to add, if I may, is that we don't allow for outside food because we have a kitchen for the folks on the porch or inside the tasting room. And then we also have 2 outdoor grills on the weekend. We have one that, chicken, hot dogs, things like that at one location. And then we have wood fire pizza oven at the other location, soft pretzels, garlic knots, and both have 16 taps out there. So our wine and beer are on tap. So you can do flights at any one of the walk-up bars. The lines last maybe 5 to 7 minutes. So very quick service.
Perfect. So basically, it's a once and done shop. You can get your winery. As you mentioned, you also are a brewery. So if you have your husband or one of your friends doesn't necessarily enjoy wine, they can come and visit. You are pet friendly as well as family friendly, and you've got food going on. So basically, everyone's happy if they come and visit you, right, Linda?
Yes, and actually, we put a playground in this year.
So parents are even more happy. They can enjoy and relax while the kids enjoy and have fun too at the same time.
Yes, and we have frozen Dole Whip like they have at Disney, and we have one barrel is wine infused and one is non-alcoholic. So there's even treats for the kids too.
Perfect. So treats for the kids, treats for the pets, and definitely treats for all the adults.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Linda. And everybody should grab their pets, their friends, their family, and join you at Mountain View Vineyard and spend some time in the Poconos.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So today we picked up a lot of great information about what's currently happening in the vineyard during harvest season. It's a perfect time to do your research on some great wineries and vineyards near you to enjoy the beauty of this time of year. If you need help finding those hidden gems, just check out the Pennsylvania Winery Association's website at pennsylvaniawine.com to find one close to you. Don't forget to check out individual wineries' websites or give them a call if you're interested in bringing your pet with you as well. Join us next time as we talk about the annual Pennsylvania Somm Judgment. Uncorked PA is live the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month, starting at noon on both Facebook and YouTube. If you can't join us live, you can always watch the program whenever works best for you, or you can enjoy the audio podcast version on Apple or Spotify or wherever you stream your podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you know when new episodes are posted. And we definitely want to thank the Pennsylvania Winery Association for supporting this program with grant money from the PLCB, and we look forward to sharing more hidden gems of the Pennsylvania wine world with you next time. Have a great day.